Today I'm putting a mini PC to the test that's different from most. It goes by the name of MeLE Overclock X5. I'm not sure how this brand is supposed to be pronounced correctly though. Anyway, this mini PC features an Intel Core i5 12450H 8-core CPU along with 32GB of DDR4 RAM and a 512GB NVMe SSD. As is often the case, we are dealing with integrated Intel UHD Graphics. Good gaming performance therefore immediately goes out the window. What's particularly positive here, though, is the device's sheer amount of ports, making this mini PC suitable for a wide range of use cases and neat projects. Furthermore, we users aren't locked out of the BIOS and are in fact allowed to make tons of adjustments. The term overclock in the model name could, however, be considered controversial, as it might not be entirely true, but it does have some merit in offering us users more CPU performance. Things get a bit tricky when it comes to the price of today's mini PC. At the time of this video, my exact configuration goes for like $440 or even $360 when applying that $80 coupon on Amazon, but that's the US price. Over here in Europe, the price is looking much worse and noticeably higher. 560 euros, or at best 530, is pretty steep. Europeans don't seem to be getting that good of a deal here. The Overclock X5 Mini PC by MeLE certainly has great potential, impressing on many fronts, but also disappoints here and there. Therefore, this mini PC may not be the right choice for everyone. In the scope of delivery are, among other things, the mini PC itself, the power cord and power supply with a rated power output of 120 watts, a VESA mounting bracket with screws, a thermal pad for an optional additional M.2 SSD, and finally some paper documentation. What immediately catches one's eye is the slightly different aesthetics of this mini PC compared to many competing models. The design is more elongated and slimmer. The dimensions are 180 by 103 by 31 millimeters. The aesthetics of the Overclock X5 are extremely simple. Externally, it features a basic plastic casing that isn't exactly eye candy. Considering the hefty price, at least over here in Europe, that's a bit of a shame. At the heart of it is the Alder Lake-based Intel Core i5 12450H processor sporting 8 cores and 12 threads. These are made up of both 4 P cores and 4 E cores. The CPU was released in Q1 2022. It also comes with Intel UHD Graphics, featuring 48 execution units. My particular Overclock X5 was configured with 32GB of DDR4 RAM. It's running at 3200 megatransfers per second in dual channel mode, as it should be. However, the speed does fluctuate during operation to help save power. Also installed is a 512GB M.2 NVMe SSD by a manufacturer unknown to me. It's called AirDisk and is based on PCIe 3.0 X4, and so the achieved read and write speeds are quite satisfactory for a device of this kind. The Overclock X5 can be opened up in no time. This is quite exemplary. Simply loosen the 4 screws on the device's bottom and pull off the metal cover. We are given great access to perform a few upgrades. The RAM, Wi-Fi card, CMOS battery, and M.2 SSD are easy to replace. The pre-installed SSD even sports a thermal pad. For expansion, there's even a second M.2 slot, but it only supports SATA. Now let's take a look at the general connectivity. On the front, there's only the power button. I don't know what the 2 small holes are for. They're definitely not microphones. Starting on the right side, there's one USB 3.2 Gen 1, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2, one 3.5mm audio for headphones and headsets, and then there's also a microSD card reader. On the rear, there's 1 gigabit LAN, one 3.5mm audio only for headphones, followed by 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C, each with DisplayPort capability, but only one supports power delivery. Next are 2 HDMI 2.0, one 2.5 gigabit LAN, and finally, around the corner, a Kensington lock. While the Wi-Fi is Intel-based, both the 1 and 2.5 gigabit LAN ports are based on Realtek. This might be a deal breaker to some. In theory, a total of 4 monitors can be connected here, 2 via HDMI and 2 via DisplayPort through USB-C. The variety and number of ports is unusually good, but at that price, there needs to stand out something truly positive after all. Nicely hidden in between the 2 HDMI outputs is a clear CMOS button to reset the BIOS settings should we ever mess anything up. I'm very happy to see that. Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2 are on board. I wouldn't consider that great, but it's decent enough. As usual, Windows 11 Pro comes pre-installed and activated. I quickly checked the license key and discovered it's an OEM key. That's very good. Oh, and out of the box, it's the 23H2 version of Windows 11. There doesn't seem to be any bloatware or third-party programs on the Overclock X5. Not even the Microsoft Edge web browser has any extensions pre-installed. I also didn't notice or detect any questionable processes or services running in the background or starting up with Windows. All in all, the Windows installation appears to be clean. I like that, but that should be very much expected from a solid manufacturer and product. Of course, I didn't just stop at my quick inspection. I also ran 3 different virus scanners. Neither Windows Defender /Security, Malwarebytes, nor Norton 360 via the external SSD scan were able to detect any malware. I was extremely positively surprised when I booted into the UEFI BIOS. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, the BIOS offers us a ton of customization options, some of which are very detailed. The available settings are quite similar to what we'd normally see on desktop motherboards, and that's a great thing. Among other things, we can even set the first and second power limit ourselves if we are not happy with 45 and 65 watts. We also have a say when it comes to the fan curve. This effectively gives us the option to make the mini PC much more quieter and potentially more power efficient than it is out of the box. And you might well have to make use of that, as the fan really ramps up once the CPU load increases. More on that a little later. Once the i5-12450H CPU is at full load, the P-cores initially clock at 3.9 GHz and the E-cores at 3 GHz, at least while the 65-watt power limit is active. A little while later, the clock speed drops considerably once we fall back to the 45-watt limit. The P-cores now only clock at 3.2 GHz and the E-cores at just 2.5 GHz. Unfortunately, the aggressive increase of the power limit by the manufacturer didn't quite yield the results I secretly had hoped for. We were only 16% ahead of the much cheaper Ace Magic K1 featuring an AMD Ryzen 5 CPU, and even worse, 21% behind the Minisforum UN1250 sporting an i5-1250P CPU. Even that mini PC is cheaper than today's MeLE model and happens to deliver more performance. This naturally also carries over to the gaming performance, although to be fair, it must be said that gaming with weaker integrated graphics has so far not really been that great, neither with Intel nor AMD. We haven't really been able to play at a smooth frame rate and decently high graphics settings. I seem to keep coming to the very same conclusion here. Only when the resolution is lowered from 1080p down to 720p, you end up getting a more pleasant frame rate. And it should be said that we are talking of older AAA game titles here. Games that aren't as graphically intense can at least be played somewhat smoothly. Now, I'd also like to address the whole topic of overclocking. Despite the term overclock in the model name, the device actually has little to do with overclocking. The i5-12450H CPU is designed to run at a power limit of 45 to 95 watts according to Intel. Just because MeLE simply hasn't restricted the CPU's power limit as much as many other brands do, that doesn't mean it's overclocked. We are still well within Intel's official specifications for this particular CPU. Now, it's clear that an 8-core processor like this has no problem playing back 4K UHD videos and movies smoothly without any hiccups. However, you should hold back your high hopes and enthusiasm when performing more demanding tasks such as image and video editing or rendering. It's certainly possible, but it requires a bit of patience to say the least. Now let's talk power consumption, temperatures, and noise levels. At light loads, the CPU is fairly efficient, but when it's subjected to heavier loads, the higher power limit means it consumes more power than many other mobile CPUs and other mini PCs do. There's a certain point in which the performance gains and efficiency start falling apart and are no longer as effective as one would like on Intel's Alder Lake processors from only increasing the power limit. That's normal. In this specific case of the Overclock X5, the CPU does draw a bit more power than many others do, but still far less than a desktop PC, one that would already be considered more power efficient. The temperatures reached here represent the average. At full load, they are pretty high, and that is while running at a power limit of 45 watts. Beforehand, the 65 watt limit kicks in and causes the CPU to reach a temperature of up to 102 degrees Celsius, resulting in immediate thermal throttling. The cooling solution simply cannot keep up. The fan is clearly audible with a maximum measured noise level of 52 decibels and even to be considered rather annoying if you're sitting right next to the mini PC. Still, when idling, the fan is somewhat pleasant. It can even turn off completely temporarily, but most of the time it's active. Nonetheless, the fan is clearly audible, although not annoying when idling. Conclusion: the MeLE Overclock X5 gives me mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm quite happy with the overall performance it offers, the numerous ports and many customization options. On the other hand, the higher noise level and above all, the price, which I consider to be too high, especially over here in Europe, kinda holds back my joy for this device. Regarding the noise levels, we could adjust the fan curve ourselves and configure a less aggressive power limit in the BIOS, no problem. The price, on the other hand, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. The US pricing is still somewhat reasonable, but the EU prices are way too high. From a technical perspective, the MeLE Overclock X5 is a decent mini PC I could generally recommend, but considering the higher price, you have to remain realistic. There are many mini PCs that deliver similar performance or even more, but cost considerably less and are perhaps even a little more power efficient if you look closely. Do you like the mini PC I reviewed by MeLE? What are the highlights and/or disappointments for you? If you enjoyed the video, I'd greatly appreciate a like, but alternatively, you could just as well hit that dislike button. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and until the next one.